We're here with Speaker Dennis Bonnen. Mr. Speaker, welcome.
Thank you.
Let's talk about the session. We're in mid-session. How do you assess where things are at in the House in your first term as Speaker?
Well, the House has already passed significant school finance reform, reducing property taxes by $2.7 billion, reducing recapture by $3 billion, and putting several billion dollars into public education. And we followed that with a balanced budget that is below population and inflation growth. And we're working on transparency on property taxes so that our taxpayers can see for the first time ever exactly what local entity is looking to increase their taxes and the date and time that they would be voting to do so if they want to go have a conversation with them before they do it.
Yeah, I was reading about a bond transparency that is being proposed in the House. So when bonds are going to be issued, to make sure that the voters get information of the impact the new bond issue is going to have on the taxes they would owe.
Well, we also have that in our property tax reform bill, where those bonds, where a lot of communities now are simply doing certificates of obligation and they're not even going to the voter. And so we would have those dollars to the taxpayer be counted against an automatic election on increased revenues, which is not something that anyone else is talking about right now, because bonds is an area where a lot of money is being spent and they are going around the taxpayer and the voter on those issues in many cases. And of course, those that are voted in by the public would not count against that revenue cap because the voters have said they want to pay for it. But also there is transparency that we're going to provide for the elections when they choose to go that direction.
The property tax reform that the House and the Senate is working on, the Senate was supposed to go first. Could you explain how this really is supposed to work when we whatever the limit on increase is, 2.5%, 3.5%, 4%, there's all these different numbers out there, but what does it mean to the average taxpayer?
Well, candidly, I think it's been badly misrepresented to the average taxpayer. The truth of it is what we passed in House Bill 3, the school finance bill, is true property tax relief. We would compress property taxes by 4 cents across the state for every taxpayer, a 5.5% reduction on average. What Senate Bill 2, House Bill 2 actually do is slow the rate of growth. They don't that bill that the Senate passed yesterday, which we support, doesn't reduce your property taxes. The reduction is seen in House Bill 3. It actually slows the growth of property taxes, and it simply creates a mechanism where a local entity has to stop at a level of increase. The Senate passed it at 3.5 for cities and counties. So at 3.5, they're going to have to stop and have an election of the voter if they want to go above that.
Neither of the bills in the House or the Senate are going to restrict the city's abilities or county's abilities to raise their property taxes above that percentage that you agree on. They can always go to the voters.
Absolutely.
And if voters say, okay, you can exceed it.
Correct. That's exactly right. And more, but honestly, a significant amount of discussion has been on whether it's 2.5, 3.5, 4, what have you, which we support completely in the House. But truthfully, I think the real power for the voter and for the taxpayer is the transparency, the appraisal reform. There's significant appraisal reform in the bill. And the transparency, never has anyone gotten a notice that says, here's the no new revenue rate. This is the rate that your local entity must adopt to ensure they don't get more money from you, the taxpayer. And if they don't want to adopt it, we will show you the rate they're proposing, literally do the math, show you how much more money they're asking of you, and then show you the date, time, and location where they will have to vote to ask for more money from you so you can go and have your voice be heard. Or we actually, in our bill on the House side, have where you can automatically click that you have opposition to them going above the no new revenue rate. So I think the appraisal reform and the transparency is some of the most powerful stuff, because what I've been saying for years, if I'm a taxpayer, which I am, by the way, I want to begin a discussion at $1. I don't want to wait and be waking up at 3.5 or 2.5% increase and then have an election. I'm for that, but I want to start talking about why you need more money from me at $1.
Yeah, and because it's important to make sure that the voters know what the politicians are spending money on.
Correct. And who's doing it? Because the biggest frustration I hear from my constituents is their property taxes go up. They talk to the mayor, they talk to the county judge, they talk to a commissioner, they talk to the council, and they all say, I had nothing to do with it. Well, this will finally end that question. Finally, you will be shown with clarity which entity is asking for more money and when they're going to go take a vote to do it.
And that is significant progress. One of the other proposals that's come out over the last couple of weeks is a swap,
Yes.
property tax relief for an increase in the sales tax. Can you tell us the genesis of that?
That's discussions that the governor and the lieutenant governor and I and other leaders have been having since December. And the reality of it is, I think that the sales tax is a broader, fairer tax, more inclusive tax. And the truth of it is, if we want to drive down property taxes, which we absolutely want to do here in the Texas House, you have to find a way to replace that revenue for our schools. And so by swapping dollar for dollar an increase, a 1 penny increase in sales tax, you can drive down property taxes by about 10 cents. That's a pretty significant reduction. You couple that with the 4 cents of compression that we have in House Bill 3 that we've passed. You look in the Houston area and across the state where we've added $3 billion to reduce recapture for Robin Hood districts. You're now talking about more dollars staying at home and less of a tax bill on your school taxes.
You're obviously from the Houston area, and you had to live through Harvey like all of us did. What are you all working on this session to address Harvey, future Harveys?
We have a large package of legislation that I'm very proud of because it absolutely addresses a future Hurricane Harvey. But what it really does well is it addresses future disasters that could hit any part of our state, and the state being better equipped and better set up to respond wherever it happens in our state. God forbid, we know it will. We're better prepared, and we have entities ready to go to work and do the job, and we are removing whatever legal barriers that we found to be a hamstringing in Harvey to be removed so that we're better prepared. I'll give you an example. One of the issues that'll be on the floor tomorrow here in the House is, a lot of folks, when they're in a mandatory evacuation, giving them the ability to frankly not worry about carrying their guns with them, evacuating from their home. We actually allow that when you're in a mandatory evacuation, you're now free to move about the state with the guns that you may be taking from your home as you're taking other important possessions with you to protect them and for protection. Because in many instances, when we have these disasters hit, you're in a mandatory evacuation, you're not exactly sure where you're spending the night. I don't want to remind anyone of this, but there's been some very difficult evacuation stories. Fortunately, we haven't had those in the last couple, thank goodness, where people have been stuck on the side of the road. They've been stuck in campsites that they didn't count on being on. So we've got a large package of emergency recovery bills here in the House. We did a package last week, and we're doing our next package tomorrow.
Does the state have an increased role because flooding and natural disasters don't necessarily confine themselves to a city or a county?
They do. One of the things that we're being careful, that's a discussion this session that hasn't been resolved yet, is helping local entities with their local match to get federal dollars and recovery dollars. One of the issues, though, that's important to me is that I think that's something the state's never done before. I think the state should only be doing that for communities that frankly just don't have the money otherwise, which candidly would mean Harris County and Houston has the resources to match locally to get the federal dollars. But Rockport, who was hit just devastated by Harvey, I think we all start to forget Rockport was the eye of that storm. Rockport doesn't have the dollars for a local match. So we're looking at how to help communities who truly need that help and that support. But you've seen where in Harris County they passed a record bond for flood control, and the state's working on those issues, not just with Harris County, but around the region.
How do you find the role as Speaker different from the role you've had as previous sessions? You've been in the House a long time, been a committee chairman for a long time. Well,
the difference is that as a committee chair or a voting member, one, I don't vote as Speaker, except for rarely. I voted for our budget, and I voted for House Bill 3 because school finance reform is the #1 issue for our House and for the state. But the difference now is that I really am here to help make sure the members have a successful process, that every member has the opportunity to be heard. That doesn't mean they succeed, but they get heard. And as a member, my job was to advocate for a specific issue, and I voted, and I'd debate, and I'd argue, and what have you. Now my job is to make sure that those debates and arguments are done respectfully, and that every member walks away, whether they win or lose, ready to come to work the next day with a positive attitude towards their colleagues, and so that we do good things for Texas. We get to a solution. I've been telling people throughout, my job is to make sure that I don't tell the members the answer to the question. My job is to make sure the members get to an answer. We put members in a room and say, okay, work this out, come to an agreement. Our job is not to tell them that answer, though.
Well, thank you, Speaker Bonnen, for taking the time from your busy schedule to visit with your constituents, which, by the way, are now all over the state of Texas.
That's right. Thank you.